your smile, ladies.
Police and chiefs in the street.
It's insanity.
That's your
Yeah, I know
from
from my gut it's not right. It's coercion.
Yeah.
My son's going to university next year, and he can't go now because he won't have.
And do you think that is actually harmful to people? I'm asking naively.
Do I think it's harmful? I don't
Yes.
think we know yet, and I don't want to try that out.
Right. What do you think about other vaccines?
I'm fully vaccinated. I don't take the flu. I have an immune system.
Would you against this?
Yeah, I'm against this vaccine.
Why is that?
Because it's on trial. Well, I know it's nearly finished, this trial, but we don't know what's going to happen 10 years down the line.
I think it comes down to personal choice. If you've got a disease that's not really killing many people, it's a 99.93 survival rate, then why do you need a vaccine to protect you from something that's not that harmful?
And be banned for travelling and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Without it.
Yeah, it's putting unfair restrictions on people who want to actually express their own freedom through choice.
Right.
With my opinions on this, I'm seen as a freak, I'm mad, I should be wearing a tin hat, the whole thing. But you know, when you think of how many thousands are gathered here, and we've got to the end of the march, we're all here with a pretty good idea that the vaccine got so many side effects and too many deaths associated with it for the government to just ignore it. Why would you go on killing people when now the statistics are such that it's not worth the risk? People are dying and being really maimed by this, and when you compare that to the deaths that happened from supposedly, because I mean that is questionable as well. What's going on? And the fact that the government is just point blank ignoring the noise we're trying to make, that the media is completely ignoring any of this. What's going on?
Have you seen anything like it in your lifetime?
Never. I mean, to me, what is it? The saying that I heard the other day was, if you ever wondered how it was that people complied in 1930s Germany, now you know. They have managed to somehow hoodwink us into believing that this is a real killer, and it's not. So, and they know this. The Great Barrington Declaration has tried to do something about it. Eminent scholars, scientists, they try to get through. They're ignored all over the place. Absolutely, and they just ignore it. So there is an agenda. You wouldn't ignore us if there wasn't an agenda.
Do you think you stand a chance against it? Do you have any?
To me, what is going on is so evil, it cannot win. I hope that something is, the tipping point is going to happen this autumn, because you know, all this is to do with the Great Reset, and surely they must be coming to a point where now whatever finances are going on, it's all going to collapse. And they need it to collapse to bring in the Great Reset. So, but the Great Reset requires the passport, and they call it the passport, but really it isn't. It is identity to control you.
Right, so you know about the mandate that's coming up, government's running for it, and they want green passports. Why do you think government wants to it's not scientific?
Well, it isn't proven. Children are completely, it seems that thankfully children are completely immune to COVID in a way that they're not vulnerable to it. The children themselves, there's only been a handful that have died, and they've all had 2 or 3 comorbidities. So we've got 5-6 million children under the age of 15 in this country, and there's absolutely no reason to. So my only conclusion is that with these technologies, they have the ability to. They're almost like a sleeping time bomb. And there's been studies in Japan that have shown that the migrates away from the injection site in adults, going into the ovaries and into the testes. So if you had the same people pushing it, the same people who, the global elite, who for years have been saying that the planet's overpopulated. Bill Gates in the TED Talk said we have an issue with man-made climate change. We have a growing population, declining CO2, and a finite resource base, and one of those variables has got to change. And he actually said in that same, I think it's the same talk, if we do a very good job globally, we can reduce the population by 10 to 15%. Well, I always thought that about pro-life and preserving life, not reducing the population. So if you wanted plausible deniability, you would create a that was dangerous enough that it killed a small section of the population, but not so dangerous that you couldn't control it and wouldn't necessarily make you vulnerable if you're a global elite. And then you would use that fear and propaganda that's being hyped up through social media, through all the media companies being bought. The newspapers are funded largely by the government now. Bill Gates has funded the BBC, the Guardian. He's got money in all the being produced for. And then you would go through all age groups and then say, great, these variants are only 0.3% in divergence, so they're essentially the same. Your immune system's going to recognise it, so there's no need to and justify more lockdowns off the back of getting weaker. So you create a situation where the only way we can get rid of this is to go to the children. But long term, if you wanted to depopulate and do it in a very subtle way that wasn't so obvious, that only manifested itself 20 years down the line, you would then.
That's your observation.
That's my observation. You'd essentially sterilise a large section of the young population, so that by the time they're at childbearing age, then suddenly we might find in 10-15 years that 80% of children are suddenly infertile.
You do realise this is a very. Yes, and it's a harsh position to be in.
It is, but it's a very clear, if you think about it, we've got the climate crisis we're constantly being told about. The logical conclusion is, if you buy into the theory that it's man that's creating the small amount of CO2 that is then tipping the climate out of balance, which I don't agree with at all. It's solar activity that's the primary driver of the climate. We know that carbon, there's plenty of scientists that haven't been funded again by the big corporations and the big institutions that have said that and observed that it's the carbon emissions don't drive temperature, they follow the temperature change. I'm not religious per se, but again, we're going into a situation where AI and robotics is being pushed more and more, and the global elite are openly saying on various forums, the World Economic Forum, even in the even BBC published reports about it a couple of years ago, that in 5-10 years' time, 500 million people will be surplus to requirements, and they won't be able to upskill to the new market. So what do you do with those people? If you've got a lot of people, in Henry Kissinger's own words, that are useless eaters, not contributing to the economy as they see it, then why would you want them around? So to do it in a very subtle way that isn't obvious until it's too late, essentially, you would do it over a long period of time, because these are multi-generational families that are carrying an agenda that's been planned over 100 years.
Eugenics, essentially.
Well, technocracy and eugenics. So they pass it on to the next generation. Now, unfortunately, we, the general public, through our own invention and our own creativity, we've created the tools for them to use against us now. A lot of people are becoming more and more aware, but the problem is people have fear. And this technology is, the reason they're using this digital surveillance and having to conform to and needing it to go to work, ultimately maybe to go to the bank and do transactions, because it isolates people. And if you don't conform, you're shut out of society, you won't be able to eat, you won't be able to earn a living. So whilst people, I think, are open to these ideas now, they weren't a year and a half ago, and a lot of my friendship group, half of them have become aware and are on board with what's going on. The others are willfully burying their heads in the sand. People are scared, and people don't want to contemplate that there's a section of society at high levels which hates humanity and ultimately wants to destroy it, because it also ties into transhumanism.
I think a lot of the people in government are just career people and they don't really know what they're doing or how to handle this. So I think it's just kind of like another layer of them implementing policies that they think that are going to make people calmer, maybe, I'm not sure. Or maybe it is just full-blown authoritarianism, who the fuck really knows, I guess.
Where do you think this is headed? What the future brings us?
Well, I mean, if you look at Scotland, and if you look at France, and you look at Germany, I mean, and especially Australia right now, I mean, I think England wants to head there right now, in terms of keeping everybody like permanently in a state of fear. But I mean, with the amount of people here and the amount of energy behind us, I mean, I don't really think that's going to last very long. People are just going to get way too fed up. Businesses are going to be way too concerned about getting people in. I mean, the amount of restaurants that we've been in recently, and they don't even fucking ask you to check in anymore. I don't think anybody really gives a shit.
Right, so you think we're winning?
Well,
hopefully in the end.
Hopefully.
Okay.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you guys.
No worries, man.